Good afternoon, everyone. Bear with me indeed. You have received a lot of information of why we are doing it, what we are doing it, but actually you might think everything is done and dusted, but it's not yet fully finalized, and we have some work to do all together. So that's why we have put those slides to explain the few next steps that are ahead of us, and also as well screening while the people were writing the question. I'll try to answer some of them directly during the speech. So if we go to the next slide, it's just a reminder. I think Christina rightfully reminded us that we are here explaining how the TIPS platform will be set up for cross-currency. But it goes beyond setting up of the platform. If we want to have a cross-currency service, we need to involve more participants. That's why we really value the participants, the market participants, the payment service provider. And we will continue doing that with the cross-currency setup to ensure that we have a successful European cross-currency service. What does it mean? Since the Governing Council has given it green light to continue the implementation that we just discussed about, and Andrea gave you some very technical insight about it, that's what we want to do. We want to involve all relevant participants to discuss on how to set it up properly. For that, on the next slide, we would like to officially launch today a call for expression of interest together with the European Central Bank, but also the national central bank involved, Denmark's National Bank and Sveriges Riksbank, to open the market participants to this call for expression of interest. It is addressed to all current and future participants of those corridors that we just presented. So can be TIPS Riksinns, TIPS DKK, Riksinns DKK participants. So it's really opening a call for expression of interest to all the PSP mostly that want to test this new cross-currency setup. We have highlighted during the previous presentation different roles, like the entry-leg PSP, the exit-led PSP. Andrea as well showed the different role in the setup of these two, let's say, two-step approach of the currency. You might want to play one or several roles in that testing period or testing the setup. We really would like to open largely to all market participants to apply for this expression of interest, so we can test as many use cases as possible. The objective of it, of course, is that we gather commitment from the market participants that will carry out the testing activities, defining the use cases with us, but also, let's say, performing those testing campaigns. So it's really a large call for expression of interest. It starts now. I will explain when do we intend to finish, but you can start thinking about the role that you want to play in that cross-currency setup, either or entry-leg PSP, FX provider. We will discuss about the additional functions that we need in that cross-currency setup, but officially we are launching this call for expression of interest to start thinking more into the details of the cross-currency setup. On the next slide, I go a bit more in detail of what will be the activities with the market during this call for expression for interest. We want to have detailed discussion. We will set up different fora so we can precisely discuss about some of the questions that I have seen as well on the chat, which are absolutely relevant. Beyond the reachability, the reciprocity, we need to discuss precisely how the FX provision will be made by the participants, how to use it, how to insert it into the PAX 8, as reminded previously. We have to discuss as well, because we are across currency, meaning across jurisdictions, the regulatory and compliance arrangements, for example, for anti-money laundering, for screening, and maybe give a clear definition and a joint definition of the roles and responsibilities of the different actors. So we will again set up different fora so we can have those discussions with those who will have applied for this call for expression of interest. Even more important, once we have details within those discussions, the roles, the responsibility, maybe the use cases that we want to test, we will have to jointly organize those testing campaigns. For those who have followed the history of the target services on our website, or maybe as a direct participant, you know that we put a large emphasis on those testing campaigns, on those community readiness as well. We will have dedicated testing campaign to do this very interesting testing of cross-currency setup. We target 2, maybe 3 dedicating testing campaign. Again, we will fine-tune the scope and the timing with the market participants, but we really would like to, for all the market participants, to have such testing campaign and discuss, of course, potential go-live dates after those testing campaigns. So keep in mind 2, maybe 3 dedicated testing campaign before or right before the go-live of the service. You will find in the website the details of the TIPS CR65. We will communicate the precise go-live dates, but you can imagine it is very much linked to some other regulation that we have on the TIPS platform. So we will show you a tentative timeline right after. We mentioned that it's the start of the cross-currency journey for the TIPS platform. It's certainly not the end. Therefore, with all those market participants with whom we will have those detailed discussions, we will discuss, of course, about the potential future enhancements of the platform. And the front runners or the first movers will also be involved in the discussion related to potential future enhancement. We don't pretend having everything on the first run for every scenario. However, there is a core, let's say, cross-currency setup or a minimum viable product, sometimes it is called, that we will need to set up. But we are already open for the future enhancement of the platform that will be developed later on. We want to discuss as well with all market participants those potential future enhancements and think ahead about the evolution of the cross-currency setup for TIPS. What precisely will be part of this call for expression of interest? In the next slides, we detail a bit the package that will be made available to those market participants. At least it's a non-exhaustive list, but it will contain all the technical and functional documentation as part of the CR, as part of the role definition, for the participant to understand their role and how to implement the cross-currency setup in the testing platform. A high-level explanation of the role and responsibility. We started again to dig into the detail of the entry-leg PSP, the exit-leg PSP, and the FX provider, where it shall be set up and where it will be inserted. That will be part of the package as well. As part already of this expression of interest, we want to have a high-level testing strategy. I started to touch upon the 2-3 testing campaigns. We'll give a bit more details and give some insights on the testing objective of those testing campaigns. We have started gathering some questions either via bilateral discussion with some of the CSM or PSP. We will continue, for example, with all the very interesting questions that you have put together today in this focus session in joint documents and providing, of course, the answers. So you can already reflect or have some ideas on how to participate to this testing campaign. So the Q&A will be joined to the package before you apply for the call for expression of interest. In order to simplify the application, we will also make available a template of a letter of intent. Sending to us this letter of intent will signal us your intention to actively contribute to this call for expression of interest and being an active participant in the testing campaign and later on for the go live of the cross-currency setup in TIPS. Concretely, some key dates on the next slide that we want to share with you. As I mentioned earlier, today we are launching officially the call for expression of interest to all those market participants who would like to have an active role in the setup, in the testing of the cross-currency in TIPS. Still this month, we will gather all the background information and make them available on our website. Many of you are already familiar on the payments side, on the payments dedicated section of the ECB website. For sure, under the tips section of that payments and market infrastructure session, you will soon find out all the package of the background information for this expression of interests. We want to run this, or to give you a bit of time to think about the roles or the roles that you want to play during this testing campaign. And the deadline that we have set up for the call for expression of interest is set until end of February. We still need to prepare for the testing campaign that will be run during the year of 2025. Therefore, we have set up an end date for the application. We can be a bit more flexible, of course, by 1 or 2 weeks, but somehow by end of February, we want to know whom wants to apply and participate actively. And throughout 2025, as the last bullet point, we will have set up those fora I mentioned earlier, initiated the discussion, clarify wherever it's needed, the roles, the responsibility, the technicalities, the functionality that will be implemented, as well the testing strategy in view of the testing campaign. And that's the part on the last slide, what we intend to do for this testing campaign. I mentioned, so let's read it on the anti-natural way, but let's have a look at the right-hand side first. The deployment on the production platform will be aligned. You know that in October 2025, we have a very specific release date, which coincides with the deployment of the instant payment regulation. So we will have the release deployment on the 5th of October, which means that once we have by mid-March the specification for the release scoping, you can imagine that between July and early September, this is where we will focus all our effort on those testing campaigns. I mentioned 2-3 targeted testing campaigns on the cross-currency setup. That's what we currently target. Again, it's a lot of work ahead of us. Not everything is written yet, and we count on all the market participants. I am sure for those open questions, as reminded by Peter and Christina, that we will find a solution. Don't worry about that, and count on us to coordinate the efforts with all market participants, and that we will have not only successful testing during the summer, but a successful go live of the cross-currency service at the end of the deployments. I'm looking at my colleagues. Ellen, that is the end of the presentation of the work ahead.